Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Read and Repeat podcast. I'm Taylor, here with my twin sister, Juliana, and today we're going to be talking about I Am Number 4 by Pittacus lore. Before we get into it, spoiler warning, we're going to be talking about the book and not pulling any punches as far as, what actually happens in it. So if you haven't read it, now is a good time to pause, go read it, and then come back. Or if you just want to listen to us chat about it without having read it, that's cool. Or if you have read it, great. We'll be interested to know your thoughts too after you hear our conversation. So now I'll turn it over to Juliana for a quick introduction to the book, and then we'll get into it.
So, I Am Number 4 by Pittacus lore, originally published in 2010. It's a young adult fantasy novel that follows the fourth of 9 aliens from the planet Lorien who were sent to Earth when they were very young because their planet was overtaken by Mogadorians, another alien race. And they have been split up around the globe and are in hiding because the Mogadorians are searching for them on Earth. And the obviously from the title, the alien we're following is the fourth of these 9 children. The reason that they have numbers is that they can only be killed in order of the numbers. So we open the novel with number 3, who is unfortunately murdered brutally. Yeah. And then we switch over to number 4's perspective, and we follow him for the rest of the story. So if I could give a brief synopsis of this, basically we follow 4, who's going by John Smith, when he and his Sapan, I think is how it's pronounced.
That's how I would pronounce it.
His guardian, who's not his parent, but is a guardian who came with him from Lorien. They end up having to leave the Florida Keys, which is their most recent hideout, and make their way to Paradise, Ohio, where John enrolls in school there. He's 15, so he's a freshman or sophomore?
No, he's a sophomore. Yeah.
Sophomore in high school. And basically, a lot of the story follows him making friends, making enemies, falling in love.
Just trying to be a normal high school alien.
Yes. And ends with basically death and destruction.
Yeah. All of those things. Sentence of the book. The prologue part is kind of like, the first sentence is, the door starts shaking. And that's also not, that's where we see number 3 get killed. So that's not the really official start to chapter 1. So the actual first, we'll just do like the first 3 sentences, 2 sentences and a word, is, in the beginning there were 9 of us. We left when we were young and almost too young to remember. Almost.
So as far as first lines go, it's not the strongest.
It's fine.
I've ever read. It's fine. It does the job, but it's not one of those that I feel like there's a lot to pull out of.
Yeah, not a lot to unpack there. He kind of goes into what he remembers from the day that he had to leave Lorien, which was, he vaguely remembers his grandmother, and she was frantic, and then he got on the ship and left, and then they arrived on Earth. And so that's he's kind of like setting the scene, but there's not too much of a scene to set at the time.
Yeah. And so let's talk, I guess, first about let's talk about John, I guess, because he's our perspective character. So this story is told in first person present tense.
Yes.
Which
it's an interesting choice.
Is an interesting choice. We could talk a bit more about that choice when we talk about the author later on. But I will say first person present tense is probably one of my least favorite tenses.
I don't really have a problem with it, but I wouldn't say it's my favorite, I guess.
Yeah, and it really will depend on the story, right? And how much you connect with the character. Because when you're first person present tense, you're really like up close and personal with that perspective. And so if you're not enjoying how the character functions and what they're focusing on and what they're describing to you, then it's going to be harder to connect with the story.
Yeah, and I think he's definitely not my favorite. He's a little too teenage boy, which I find a little annoying because he's also an alien. Yeah, he grew up most of his life on Earth, but he's also an alien, so you'd think there would be a little bit more of a difference, but he's just like a teenage boy who wants to be normal, and has crushes on girls that are like way too intense for his age. I feel maybe that's the alien part. Maybe that's what it is. I don't know.
Well, yeah,
they kind of allude to that, but
yeah, we can talk about that.
Almost makes it a little bit weirder.
To me. Oh, we didn't do our whole impressions then versus impressions now.
Oh, we didn't. Yeah, we just jumped right into it.
Oh, we can do that now.
Yeah, okay.
We haven't gotten too far.
No. When I first read this, I don't know, I think I liked it. I read it multiple times, and I feel like I remember it better than, like, some books I've read. I don't remember having a really strong feeling of, like, oh, I love this book. I just remember reading it a lot, and I think that was just because it's, like, it's a long book, but it's a kind of a quick read, I feel. And I still feel that way. Juliana might feel differently, but yeah, I feel like it's a quick read, and it's engaging enough for me to just like get through it quickly. So I wouldn't say I loved it then. I liked it a lot. I liked it a lot now too. Well, I liked it less probably now, but like just because I think I found some of the love story part annoying. But yeah, honestly, I don't have a ton to say about this one as far as that. Like it was something I liked then. I still like it now. Don't feel strongly either way.
How I'm remembering how I liked it way back when is probably pretty similar to how you felt about it. I think we were reading this probably around when we were sophomores in high school.
I guess.
Or a little bit younger.
Yeah, a little bit younger. It came out in 2010. So yeah, a little bit younger.
But yeah, I don't know if we read it until there was a movie in the works. Which actually, I think the movie came out like the next year. Because I remember reading it right around the time when I heard that there was a movie, because I think it got more traction, and that's how I heard of it. Unless you were the one who first got it.
I feel like I might have... Yeah, well, the movie did come out in 2011, actually, so you might be right.
So that's I just feel
it's
like...
It's on Hulu, for those who
want to watch it.
And, yeah.
But yeah, so my memory of it is... Basically, yeah, I remembered the book pretty well.
Yeah.
I read it definitely more than once, but I'm also not sure why, because I didn't love it. It wasn't a deep connection for me.
That's how I feel too. I'm like, why did I read this so much?
I think one of the things that I remember is that I was reading it when we were in Florida one year, because we would go down to Florida a lot for family vacations, and they start off in the Florida Keys.
Yeah.
And so I felt really immersed in that. I mean, it's not a long stretch that they're in the Florida Keys.
No, it's the very
at
beginning.
All. But then they also take like a road trip up to Ohio, and we always drive down to Florida. So I was very much in that mode of, driving through states and being in Florida. Yeah. And I don't know, I guess I connected with that. And then also being that I was on vacation while reading it, I guess that was a pleasant atmosphere for me to be reading in.
That makes sense.
So I think I kind of attached it to that experience. But I wouldn't say that I really connected deeply with the story or the characters that much. And now reading it, I mean, I texted you a couple times about this. I was taking my sweet time getting through this book.
I'm in law school reading it on the subway, and it took me less time, I think, to finish it.
Yeah, I was dragging my feet. It's very long for the story that it is. It's a very long book,
especially considering that it's the first in a series. You'd think it'd be a little shorter,
right? And the funny thing is, if I remember correctly, my impression of the later books is that they are shorter.
They are. I think they are.
And less slow. This is a very slow story.
I didn't find it slow, actually.
I also might have found it slow because I took my time reading it. So I would come back to it and I'd be like, man, we're still in the middle of this scene. So it could be that. But I also remember kind of finding it a bit slow when I was younger, too. And I didn't necessarily dislike that. I think this time around, I didn't necessarily dislike it either, but I also didn't enjoy it.
I think I find parts of it to be slow, but not overall the feeling of it slow. Like the book itself, I don't feel as slow.
Yeah, you know what it is?
Just different parts, maybe.
So we can jump back into talking about John,
yeah,
which is where we left off. So John as a character, as we were kind of alluding to, is a little bland.
Yeah, a little bit.
And
a little bit.
I don't know how I feel about this, but remember how there was always a thing that people said about a lot of young adult protagonists where you're supposed to put yourself in their shoes. So they're supposed to be bland, and not that they necessarily always are, but that in some stories when you kind of have a main character who's kind of boring, it's because you're supposed to identify with them so you can fill in all the blanks and put yourself into them.
I don't really subscribe to that.
I don't really know if I agree with that. That's a thing.
Yeah.
It's not something that I'm not someone who likes to identify as the character.
Yeah, I like to identify with characters, and I feel like I do that better if they have substance to them.
Exactly. Specificity.
Yeah.
Specificity. That, I think, was something we mentioned actually in our Beautiful Creatures discussion, our first episode, is that even though we didn't necessarily connect deeply with the characters in that story either, there were more things, I think, there that were very specific and that painted a very particular image of who these characters are. And in this, John is he's just a white boy in Ohio.
Who's also an alien, but that gets so lost a little because he's just a white boy in Ohio.
And that's the thing.
And there's nothing wrong with being a white boy in Ohio, but
any white boys out there in Ohio, we mean no disrespect.
Yeah, because we're sure that you have more substance as a person than this character does.
Yeah.
But that's the point, is that's his defining qualities are white boy in Ohio and then also alien.
He's really that generic, he's like that Captain America character. And I mean no disrespect to Chris Evans' Captain America. Because I like him.
With what you say.
I like him, but you know that he's that guy who's clearly meant to be the main hero.
Yeah, and
type.
then there's not much else.
And there's not much else to him. So when we first meet him, obviously we mentioned they're in the Florida Keys, and then what happens when another member of their group dies, no matter where they are. None of them have met each other in years because once they got to Earth in their spaceship, they had to split up. So it was one child and one Sapien, I think is how you pronounce it, but I'm not sure. I'm really sorry.
It's a made-up word, so it's okay.
Yeah, but basically, the Sapien is their guardian, not related to them, because on Lorien, how their society is divided up is that there are basically superheroes and there are people who do not have powers.
Yeah.
And so the superhero people are the ones who develop various different kinds of superpowers at a certain age, and they're called the Guard. And then the others are, I don't know if the word is, I think Sapien is the name of the role that they take on when they mentor a member of the Guard, but I forget what their actual...
Yeah, I don't remember.
What they're actually called. But basically, the Sapien is their guardian, not related to them. We don't really get too many details on how they get paired up, I don't think.
There's no details on how they get paired up.
Yeah, but John's Sapien, we're calling Henry at this point. We don't know any of their...
I think it's technically supposed to be Henri.
Yeah.
Because he's got, the Lorien accent, which sounds kind of French. But I will not call him that. I'm only going to call him Henry.
Yeah, we're going to call him Henry.
Yeah.
But it's Henri. Yeah. Is how they spell it, which would be the French Henri.
Yeah, but we're going with Henry.
Yeah. So Henry is the name we're calling him, but
which I think is what they do in the movie. They just go with Henry.
Yeah. We're meant to understand that that's not his original name. We never learn the original Lorik name of John. By the way, John has had many different names. They've moved from place to place. I think Henry always just keeps the same one because he doesn't have to be in school, I guess.
Yeah. The one previous to the one he had when he was in, before they had to move to Ohio, was Daniel Jones, which I thought was great because Daniel Jones is the quarterback of the New York Giants.
Yeah, we are Giants fans here.
And we are Giants fans. So that was very exciting to see that he was Daniel Jones. But then he quickly becomes John Smith and is John Smith for the rest of the movie. I mean, the rest of the book. Also the movie. And it's kind of disappointing, actually, because, not that Daniel Jones is that interesting of a name, but I'm also John Smith. You didn't already use that one. Isn't that so obvious that this is just a made-up name?
That's my thing, is John Smith, calling yourself John Smith is like calling yourself John Doe or, whatever. It's really so... I mean, just that's an example of just how bland this character is.
Yeah. He chose that name for himself, so...
Yeah.
There you go.
It's really, and no disrespect to any John Smiths out there. I feel like we're disrespecting.
Yeah, it's.
We have a lot of Johns in our family.
Yeah,
no.
John is a fine name.
John.
Smith is a fine name, but if you are trying to blend in somewhere, I don't feel like John Smith is the way to go because it does sound like John Doe. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree, and I was very I thought that was kind of lame. So we've got John Smith and his Saipan Henry, who he refers to as his dad for the sake of other people. But basically on Lorien, they are raised by their grandparents, and they have a Saipan guardian who works with them if they are part of the guard. So if they develop superpowers, their parents are off fighting for the planet. Except we're also meant to understand that they're very peaceful people.
Yes. So
and they've never been attacked before.
Yeah, so I don't really get, like, what they're doing.
It's not made clear at all.
Yeah.
And the thing is, we come to understand that John doesn't really know a lot about his home planet.
Yeah.
Henry has not really told him
Is
anything.
this why you find Henry so annoying?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Henry has not really told anything about his heritage. And here's the thing. I think we're supposed to understand Lorien. The crux of this story, I was trying to put my finger on, what is the story really about? You know, because there's the plot of a story, and there's the characters of the story, and then there's the themes, and what the story is trying to tell you, or even if it's not trying to tell you a certain thing, what is it kind of getting across? Mm-hmm. Because there's always some kind of theme going on here, or some kind of purpose. And in this case, it doesn't seem like a lot of thought went into it's not about the intrigue of aliens. It's not about how interesting the Lorik people are. It's not about exploring another culture.
Yeah.
Outside of Earth culture. It's kind of like it's more character focused, really.
It's more like, hey, here's this kid, and let's explore how he deals with trying to fit in with these, you know, extraterrestrial superpowers as a normal kid, like, and his normal kid feelings, and how does he navigate high school? I'm like, I don't care. I want to find out more about where you came from, dude.
Right. But that's not really built up. And the thing is, later books definitely go a little bit more into this kind of thing. I don't know if it does it well. I don't remember. I definitely read some of them, but I did not read all of them.
Yeah.
But this book really you're just meant to, you kind of understand Lorien as like Earth, but smaller, and they have superpowers.
Yeah. And
this is kind of explained away by something that either Henry or John might actually mention this, as having been told this by Henry at some point, that the Lorik have been coming to Earth for many, many years and have helped basically build Earth's society to an extent. There's the whole lot of like ancient aliens kind of thing. It's like the Lorik are the ones who have been coming and helping build the pyramids and all that. And we don't have to get into, the real life, for lack of a better term, conspiracy theories about that. But that's what we're meant to understand, that the Lorik have worked very closely with the people of Earth, even if Earth doesn't really know that.
Yeah.
And so you can kind of get away with saying that, Lorik culture is just so similar to Earth because they've actually interacted with them a lot. So you don't have to do a lot of legwork to understand who the Lorik people are.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of explained away.
Yeah.
And a little annoying.
And so all that to say, that's kind of why John just comes across as like any other guy. And a little bit, but at the same time, blander, I think, than any guy.
Yeah.
We get this basic story of John going to high school in Ohio, showing up, being the new kid, and running through those basic high school plot lines of he's a new kid, he's trying to fit in, he gets bullied because a nice, pretty girl talks to him, and then her ex-boyfriend is jealous, and he's the quarterback, and the ex-girlfriend is an ex-cheerleader, and they're popular, and...
Yeah. And it also, before we get too far into, like, that side of things, it also really feels like he is doing this for the first time, even though supposedly throughout his life he's had to move constantly, high school, like, school to school to school to school. And yet, like, you're reading this, and I don't feel like it's a good, like, he's not even saying, like, oh, this is the same as what I've experienced, or it's different from what I've experienced. It's kind of just like he's doing it for the first time and, like, has never experienced this kind of thing before.
We don't get a feel for John as he's existed it feels like John just kind of sprung up for the story.
Yeah, yes, exactly.
Which is exactly what happened, because that's how it works when you're writing a story.
Yeah.
Except that
you do want to...
Usually you want to have an idea of who the character has been.
And if, like, you say that he's moved a lot, like, you want it to be clear that he has, and not just, like...
Right. And so you would imagine he might have other previous memories of times when he's had to leave friends behind. Specific people that he might have fond memories of. Or... he might talk about wanting to have made friends here or there, but being prevented by Henry. And while that's alluded to, we don't get any concrete details about that.
And it's basically like this is the first time he's got to navigate a high school in the United States.
And then, of course, very quickly, but they move to Ohio. He starts going to school. He meets Sarah, who is the girl that he ends up falling in love with, who has the football quarterback
Mark
ex-boyfriend Mark, who's his bully basically. So you've got the bully, you've got the love interest, and then you've got the friend Sam.
Yeah, I think one thing that we should also make clear is like he does, like, he is developing his alien superpowers as this is, like, the whole story is unfolding, but he also starts out with, like, just a higher base of ability. Like, he can run faster and swim faster, and he's stronger, and, like, so he's already got all of that advantage over human beings. And smarter too, apparently.
Although we never get to see.
Yeah, that's not something I remembered, because you definitely don't see that. But anyway, I just wanted to lay that layer, then we'll come back to it. But yeah, so.
Yeah.
You're going to mention Sam.
So yeah, so we've got the bully, the girlfriend, the friend. And that's Mark, Sarah, and Sam. Sam is the friend who we haven't mentioned yet. So Sam is kind of the outcast
really into aliens.
Really into aliens. Convenient.
Yeah.
Interest in aliens, or inconvenient in a sense. And definitely someone who's kind of like the nerdy, quiet kid that John befriends almost immediately, pretty much. But aside from that, you know, you don't get John remembering past friends he's had, or past times that he's tried to make friends,
or past
crushes, or past bullies.
And that was one of the points I was going to make with bringing up his superpowers. Like, when he first gets to school, and throughout this whole thing, like, and Mark is bullying him, he's thinking about, like, I could crush you if I wanted to, blah, blah, blah. And it's, like, kind of like he's never had these thoughts before, but he's always been physically capable and physically stronger. But it's just very strange to be like, okay, so you've never been bullied, and that's fine, maybe that was the case, but, like, you've never had this thought before about being stronger. Like, I don't know. I don't know. It's just...
Right. And it seems like for some reason at this school, he sticks out more than he has in the
past.
Yeah,
which is weird, because they purposely moved to small places. So, like, or small towns is what I mean by that, because it's harder for them to blend in, but that means it's harder for the Mogadorians to blend in. So, like, that way they'll know as soon as they get there, is the theory. So, okay, that makes sense. But, like, then you think he does have this experience, like, every time he moves to a small town I am number 4. No. I am the new kid, and people are going to target me in some way. But it almost feels like, nope, he's always been able to blend in, except for here for some reason. I don't know, puberty?
Right, well, and that's the thing, is it's kind of indicated, I guess, that maybe he's never had a crush like this before. He's never been singled out by someone. He never had a pretty girl talk to him and then had her ex-boyfriend be the popular jock who bullies him, like, and that's why he's sticking out here.
Okay, that's fine, but
it's just...
That's flimsy to me, because I'm sure he's stuck out in other ways.
Right, and again, it's that specificity that we're missing. We're missing the people and places and things that were most important to him, that he's carried with him through his journey on Earth, that's made him who he is. He just kind of has sprung up for the story and is existing now.
The only thing I felt was believable was, like, his sadness about Henry at the end. Henry's the only thing it's understood he's been with the entire time. So, like, his feelings about Henry, I feel, are like the most authentic that I can get behind, because I'm like, yeah, obviously this is the one constant in your life since you were 4, so okay.
Yeah, and we get some good details with that. I would have liked more. I would have liked more from both of them, just more idiosyncrasies, more very specific,
like Lorian things.
Loric things that they do. The one bit of culture that we get that is kind of to indicate how Loric are different than Earth people is Henry tells John that the Loric are very, I guess, monogamous is the word.
Yeah.
And in a way that Earth people aren't, and it's kind of like a soulmates mate for life kind of deal for them. So, because, John is having his first crush on this girl, and it's getting serious, and he's kind of like...
But Henry's basically like, no.
Yeah, Henry's kind of like, well... But what's super funny is that... I guess I shouldn't really get into later books, but in later books you kind of find out that's not really true.
Oh,
and that
I don't remember that.
And that Henry was just probably projecting his own experience with love, because you have this...
Oh, so the one thing that we know about Loric culture is, like, not even true.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing, is I don't know if the authors were, like, going to go with this as a Loric trait and then backtracked for
Possibly.
later drama and later books, or if that was always going to be, like, Henry's an unreliable narrator of his experience and the Loric experience.
I mean, that might be the case.
Which
I could see that.
Is another reason why I don't like him, but but yeah, so that doesn't need, I mean, I know we got it, that's not brought up to the like second or third book or whatever, but so that's a piece of Loric culture that's just not actually even true.
Yeah.
So we don't get a feel for, like, the Loric people and how they're different, how they're alien,
It's like, why make him an alien even if...
Just make him like an Earth dude with superpowers who's running from some secret organization or something.
Yeah.
The alien part doesn't really come into it in this book, not in the way that I think it does more so in later books. But again, this book is the first one, and when you're just getting into a series,
like 441 pages long. So
it's a long book, yeah. But most of the time we spend getting to know his relationship with Sarah.
Kinda.
And
I feel like they move very fast, and I don't get a lot of build-up.
Well, that's the thing. Again, with the specificity, there's not really a lot there. There's very surface level getting to know you. We get some character traits from Sarah in terms of, so we learn that she's really friendly and outgoing and nice. She takes pictures a lot, so and she's the daughter of the real estate agent who moved Henry and John in. So that's how she kind of has an in with John. Is that she knows...
She already knew that there was going to be a new kid at school because her mom was the real estate agent.
Yeah, so she was looking out for him, and then she said hi to him on the first day. And
yeah, she seems cool.
She seems really cool. One thing that's really interesting about her is that she gives this little backstory to John about how she used to be before he showed up and before, the past couple of years of her life, where she was a cheerleader, she was dating Mark, and she found herself becoming very mean and toxic, I guess, and just falling in with the wrong crowd of people, and then ended up going to stay with her aunt in Colorado, I think.
Yeah, for the summer or something.
Yeah, and then she fell in love with nature and photography and basically changed her whole personality.
Broke up with Mark.
Quit cheerleading and became just basically a nicer person. So she kind of had
I love someone with character growth.
Yeah,
we don't get to see it, but we know what happened.
Yeah. So she kind of reinvented herself.
Yeah.
And on one level, I do like this detail about her. I find that very interesting. Even though we don't get to see it on page, you could have a character with that who's a very self-aware, very self-reflective character.
I just don't see why we can't have a nice cheerleader, though. Like, she could still be a cheerleader and
that's
not
be a bad
person.
That's one of the things that kind of makes it feel like almost disingenuous.
Yeah, like, it's very stereotypical, like,
right.
Mark's the quarterback, and he's an asshole, and he was dating a cheerleader who was bad, but now she turned good, and she's no longer a cheerleader, and, like, it's sports people bad.
Which is kind of weird, too, because it's indicated that she's still friends with her cheer
right, like
squad.
So obviously they were never the issue.
Yeah, and in fact, she takes them on a trip to help rebuild her aunt's animal shelter in Colorado at some point.
They're obviously
and they all go with
still
her.
very close.
Yeah, and it's indicated that she's nice to everyone now, whereas previously she wasn't nice to everyone. So
it sounds like
she still hangs out with Mark, even though he's an asshole.
Which is weird.
She's basically everyone's friend. And you know what? I can respect that in a character if we see more conflict coming up between that character's kind attitude and the people around her who don't meet that.
You would think that she would have issues with Mark.
And she does.
I mean, she does, but, like, she still is friends with him. She'll still make excuses for him a little bit. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, and I don't even hate that necessarily, but I just think that we don't get to see enough of her have a character.
Yeah.
To really buy that she's this person.
Yeah.
And still a full-rounded character. It kind of just seems like she's nice because she's supposed to be, because she's the love interest.
Yeah.
And
John loves that she's nice.
Yes, and John is a bland, kind boy. And
I guess he's kind. Honestly, I don't even think he is. He's kind of mean to Sam.
Okay, yeah, actually, that's true. Let's talk about their relationship a bit.
Yeah, so Sam is John's best friend, but it takes them a little while to become friends. And honestly, the way, because we're seeing all of John's thoughts about Sam. He's really an asshole.
Because, as we mentioned, Sam is kind of into all the alien conspiracy theory kind of thing. And John, being that he actually is a literal alien...
He just has, like, no respect for Sam.
Well, he doesn't want Sam to guess that he's an alien, so he plays it like, oh, I'm such a skeptic, yeah, like those ridiculous alien believers kind of thing. And on the one hand, I get that he doesn't want to have too many conversations about that kind of thing to keep Sam from figuring out who he is. But on the other hand, he's just so mean about it, and Sam doesn't seem to care.
Yeah, that's the thing, is like, he really doesn't. I would, though.
And it's like, is it because John's, like, his only friend?
Right, because it doesn't really seem like Sam has other friends. At all. I don't think we ever see him interact with anybody else without John.
No. There's like a scene where Sam meets Henry, and they talk about it because Henry's done some research into those things, obviously to keep an eye on the news to see if anyone's actually figuring out the real aliens that are on Earth. And so he and Sam can banter back and forth about all the other theories out there, which there were some that were interesting. I was wondering if they pulled...
Yeah, I was wondering if any of them were actually, like, real conspiracy theories, but...
I'm sure some of them were very specific. I feel like they probably are.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they have that kind of conversation, but then John will make, like, an offhand comment about how, oh, yeah, you and Henry are both into those crazy theories, you know? Or there's a point when...
I just really didn't like the way he thought about him.
Yeah, he kind of thinks about him as like, oh...
lowly human. And I'm like, what besides your superpowers have you shown us makes you better?
Right. There is this air of, oh, Sam's the quiet, friendless...
Yeah.
Loser kid.
Yeah.
That I'm friends with because I'm nice.
And I'm not interested really in being friends with him.
Right.
I'm friends with him because I'm nice.
And
good for me.
And Sam is a really kick-ass friend.
Sam is great. Sam is one of the best characters in this book. I love Sam. And it's not really because he's got that much depth to his character, but, like, he is loyal, he's thoughtful, he's got a little bit of a backstory.
He unquestioningly, one night, John calls him out of the blue on, like, Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Which, mind you, Sam's family situation doesn't seem that great. He lives with his mom and his stepdad, and his mom works a lot. And actually, does he have a stepdad?
I don't know.
Only in the movie?
Yeah, I don't know if he does, actually.
I don't remember.
I feel
like there was a reference. Regardless, his home life isn't indicated to be great. We only meet his mom once. She doesn't seem very pleasant, and then she works a lot, which is probably why she's not very pleasant. She's trying to support her family.
And yeah, working a lot sucks.
She's a nurse. And so Sam doesn't seem to have many plans involving family, especially around Thanksgiving. But still, John calls him like 5 p.m. on Thanksgiving and is like, hey, my dad is missing. and I think I know where he is, and I need to go get him. And Sam is just like, yeah, I'll be there in like 20 minutes.
Yeah, and neither of them know how to drive, but Sam is like, I'm going to drive my dad's car.
He offers up his dad, his dad went missing. And this is why he believes in all these alien conspiracy theories.
And this is also partially why he was ready to jump in and be like, yes, I will help you find your dad.
Yes, exactly. Is because he knows what that's like to have your dad go missing. Mm-hmm. And in this case, if John knows where he is, there's something they can do about it. So his dad, Sam's dad, actually went missing when he was about 7, I think, and literally just disappeared. Like, he went to the store, and then his truck was found, and his glasses were on the pavement, and then he's just gone. And so
Sam thinks that he's been abducted by aliens, or like that. I don't know if that was his theory. I don't know if he believes that anymore, but like he still is clinging on to that, I think.
Yeah. And so then that's why when something happens to Henry. So Henry actually ends up following a lead based on some of these pamphlets that Sam gets from
following a lead about the Mogadorians. And like what
so this kind of alien conspiracy pamphlet that Sam subscribes to, he gets in the mail, runs a story about Mogadorians, and Sam mentions it to Henry and John just offhandedly when they're talking about other alien conspiracy theories, and they're like, oh my god, how did these guys know about this? So then Henry, under the pretense of being an obsessed conspiracy nerd himself, requests to get a copy of the pamphlet, and then he ends up following up on the lead and tracking down the people who create it, because they're actually from Ohio as well, just a couple hours away in Athens. And so he goes to check them out.
And he's supposed to be back in time for Thanksgiving at Sarah's, which I do find it a little weird that Sam and Henry were invited to Sarah's for Thanksgiving, but maybe I shouldn't. I don't know.
John and Henry.
Oh, yeah.
Sam was not invited.
Sam was not invited. John and Henry were invited to Thanksgiving at Sarah's. Maybe that isn't weird.
I think that's
I'm just
weird.
projecting.
Yeah, no, I don't think that's weird.
But, yeah, it's not weird. It was very nice of them to invite them. What is weird is that Henry would go on this quest 2 hours away and like think that that's the day to do it
on Thanksgiving
when
we've been invited somewhere where people will miss us.
And I guess the other thing I thought was weird is that like they didn't seem at all like Sarah's family didn't seem at all concerned by the fact that Henry wasn't there. And like I know that John was like, oh, he got tied up at work, like, you know, he can't make it, but like also it's Thanksgiving, like what is he doing? You know, like, it's just...
I don't know if I find that strange. I mean, people do work on Thanksgiving.
No, I know, but, like...
I think John was so cagey about it. I guess we're meant to understand he was hiding his emotions very well.
Yeah, but I don't believe it.
I didn't have a problem with that part, to be honest. The part that kind of drives me a little nuts is the fact that Henry would agree to go with him to Thanksgiving and then just like leave.
Yeah, I did. That was really annoying.
Leave to investigate this thing, which could turn out to be, because we're meant to understand that Henry's been very cautious up to this point and always moves them at the first sign of trouble. And there's many signs of trouble in this town because John keeps sticking out a lot by standing up to bullies and
using his powers a little bit.
And using his powers and such. But then now Henry's like, all right, I'm just going to drive 2 hours to go investigate this thing and leave my alien, like,
ward
charge alone when he's only just developing some powers and can't necessarily use them yet to defend himself.
Yeah, so it was a questionable and I feel like out of character decision. Like, honestly, I think it's
I think we're meant to understand that Henry is under some kind of pressure that he hasn't been before, that he's kind of losing it a bit, which is understandable.
Okay.
Because
I get that. I see that. But
because there's a letter too at the end, I don't even think he read it.
No, we don't read it.
So there's things that we're meant to understand that are going on that John doesn't know about, but he doesn't know so much stuff that it really is kind of frustrating
Henry to just leave him without any of this knowledge.
Yeah. And so Henry does get kidnapped, and I think we started talking about this because we talked about how Sam was just like, yeah, let me go with you, John, to find your kidnapped dad.
And I'm going to use my dad's car that's been sitting in the garage for like 8 years. and take it out and drive it. And also it still works totally fine, which it might. They did kind of like explain that away. I was still a little skeptical, but
yeah. And also these two 15-year-olds who apparently have never driven before just drove fine to Athens.
Yeah, 2 hours.
2 hours. Totally normal.
Also, I love when they do finally rescue Henry and they go back, they leave Henry's truck, right? Because, the Mogadorians, like, will recognize it now. But then he buys a new truck that is described as almost identical to the first one. So I'm like, what's the point?
Yeah, that too, I don't understand either. Because then they say, but it's just like, any other truck that's around here. They all look the same or whatever. Yeah, and it's like,
okay.
There's just some things that don't add up, and they seem to be explained away to be plot convenient because plot is plot. But yeah, let's talk a bit about why I felt the story was kind of slow. So we spend a lot of time, as I mentioned, in high school settings. Basically we go through kind of the whole, well, not the whole school year, the whole first half of a school year, I think. Yeah. And so we're meant to understand that in this time, John starts a new school in around October.
Yes.
Gets a girlfriend
before Thanksgiving.
Yeah, before Thanksgiving.
Maybe it was September.
Maybe it was.
I think it was because I think the weather was still warm, actually.
Yeah, I think they'd already started school, so it wasn't the very beginning of September. But
yeah.
And we end up. There's this one scene. So early on to when they're in Ohio, obviously because it's in October, there's a Halloween kind of fair, I guess. Like
fall
festival sort of thing. And that scene to me goes on forever. We all walked through the entire day.
Yeah, that's true.
From start to finish of this fall festival. Actually, yeah, that reminds me exactly what I picked out about the writing that really drove me kind of nuts, is that there's a lot of time spent just describing actions and things that happen that are not really relevant to anything. Like, John will walk us through every single action he takes in a moment.
And then also skip ahead sometimes and, like, gloss over stuff at other points, I feel.
Right, in ways that don't feel that they serve the story. Because a lot of times it feels like John just describing actions or things for the sake of orienting the reader, but it doesn't let us into... The way he describes things is so just straightforward.
Yeah, like I brush my teeth for 5 minutes. Then I put on my sweater and notice a pull. And whatever, it's fine. And these are not real lines. This is just the kind of thing where it's like, he's describing those things.
Right, and it doesn't really, in a lot of cases, it doesn't do anything to either tell us more about his character and what's important to him, or tell us about things that are important for us to know.
I do agree, but at the same time, I feel like a lot does happen. It starts with somebody being killed, and then he finds out about it, and then they move to Ohio, and then he starts school. He gets in a fight. His first new superpower appears. And, like, that all happens, like, the first 10, 20 pages.
I'm not saying that a lot doesn't happen in the story. A lot does happen.
I think that's what made it feel fast to me, even with the writing style, where it was like, okay, but... there's still, in the next 10 pages, like, I know there's going to be some progress, like some forward progress.
I know, yeah, it's really not so much that, it's more like it feels slow. It's not slow, it feels slow.
I guess I
and not in a way that is interesting or serves the story, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I didn't really mind it, I guess.
Because we didn't need, like, a step-by-step how long it takes for all the ingredients and steps that it takes for him and Sarah to make pancakes.
That's true. That was yeah. Okay, there's some kind of stuff like that where it's kind of ridiculous.
It would be one thing if it was a really interesting thing, or he was picking up on noticing really interesting things about Sarah and how she worked,
or even if he'd never made pancakes before. Actually, he might have said he never made pancakes before, but, like, it wasn't in a, like, oh, I'm an alien and, like, I don't eat pancakes kind of way. It was just like, I'm a boy who's never made pancakes kind of way.
Basically, there's too many of the wrong details, I feel, and not enough interesting descriptions to really get a better feel for the character, which lends to him just not feeling very well-rounded. Not really knowing what's important to him in a scene, aside from just that Sarah is important to him. That's really it. Sarah, and at some point Sam.
And Henry. Henry's always pretty important.
Yeah. And Bernie Kosar. Let's talk about Bernie Kosar, because we haven't brought him up yet. So there's this dog who shows up in Ohio and immediately takes a liking to John. He's described as a beagle. Mm-hmm. And John ends up taking him in, and Henry agrees that they can have this dog, and basically he follows him everywhere.
Yeah, but this is one of the weird things about it is, like, so he shows up and then, like, really is really focused on John, and then he keeps showing up, like, at the school, and, like, John is like, that's weird, but doesn't go any further. And I'm like, okay, if I'm John normal kid, like, yeah, that is weird, but okay, like, what are you gonna do? If I'm John, then the alien that knows, like, alien things happen, I'm like, this is weird, and I wonder if there's something else going on. You know, but, like, John doesn't think that. He's just like, this dog seems to like me. Henry, can I have a dog? Like, even when the dog shows up at their house after being at school, like, I don't know.
Which kind of goes back to him not really knowing anything about Mogadorians or Lorians.
But, like, also being the hubris that he has to be like, oh, well, I'm an alien from the planet Lorien, and I know the Mogadorians exist, but, like, there's no way that other alien-like things could exist. Like, I don't know, you know? Like, he doesn't even think that... Yeah. It's not even about knowing Lorien culture, because Bernie Kosar is a Lorien pet. But, I don't know, think about where you came from. This dog might be from somewhere similar.
I don't know if I think that... I think I would find it strange if I were him, that this dog is following him around. But here's the thing, and this is what I wanted to bring up, that I think is a fault in the writing, is that, as Taylor said, it turns out that Bernie Kosar, who, by the way, John names Bernie Kosar after the quarterback, who I think he was an actual quarterback.
I think he was too, but John doesn't really know him. There's just like a poster in his room, and I think his tag says Bernie Kosar.
So here's the thing. John, for the whole book, thinks that this is just a stray dog that they took in, but we do learn that Bernie is actually a chimera, which is a creature from Lorien, who was actually his grandparents' pet, I think.
And
he came with them. Yeah, he came with them on a ship to Earth. And for some reason, God knows why, Henry knew that Bernie was following them around since they left Earth, but John was never allowed to know.
Like, yeah, it doesn't make sense. But then all of a sudden, Bernie just decides now to be a dog that lives with them instead of just a random deer or a gecko on the wall. Like, that's the things that he was before.
And so now
But now it's okay that he is a dog who's their pet.
And we never have an explanation for this.
No.
But the other thing is, why did he have a collar when he showed up?
And why did it say Bernie Kosar on the collar?
Yeah. No. Where did he get the collar? Because if he has been following them around this whole time, and it was indicated he was the gecko on the wall in Florida in the beginning, John mentions before they leave Florida that there was a gecko. He used to stare at him from the wall, and he used to see it every morning. And then it's indicated that was Bernie, or Hadley, as his Loric name was. And yet, we don't understand how he came to then have this collar that he shows up with in Ohio, as if he has been owned for a long time, because it's indicated to be an old collar by another person. And so that is where I'm wondering if, unless we're meant to believe that Henry staged this thing where he found Bernie, put a collar on him, and then had him show up at their door, which we don't know. There's no reason to believe that. Other than also, that we know that Henry knew what Bernie was.
Yeah, exactly. And he kept some information from him, so, like, maybe that, yeah.
But, yeah, we don't know why at all. And so it kind of reads as if the authors decided at the end that they wanted to make this dog actually be from Lorien and change the whole lore, and then forgot to change this part in the beginning. That's what it kind of feels like, which maybe there was some other thought process behind that is not that, but it's not, doesn't show in the text at all. So that's where there are some parts that feel like they weren't really set up on a firm foundation, but they were treated as if it's a cool plot twist that we're just going to have happen now. And that's kind of like the reveal later on of Bernie actually being this chimera who can shapeshift and who has actually been with John this whole time. That's kind of how it's done, is it's kind of brought up as this plot twist that wasn't really well thought out.
Yes. Yeah. So it kind of just feels weird and doesn't make sense.
Right. And
it would have made more sense if Henry didn't know about it, honestly.
Yes.
Like, even that would have just...
It would have made more sense if Henry didn't know about it, like, if somehow these chimeras also got separated from them or something, and then he found them again or something. Yeah.
When they got Henry's like, oh my god. Or even if Henry was like, yeah, I thought it could be him, but I didn't know.
Yeah.
Like,
either that or that they just had him the whole time and knew about him the whole time.
Yeah, I don't understand why they couldn't. Even, Henry does, like, hide weird things from John. Like,
there's no rhyme or reason.
Ever.
So, John, we start to learn more about Lorien a bit when John starts getting his legacies. We didn't talk about his legacies, which we probably should have.
I just called it, like, his extra powers.
His superpowers, his alien superpowers are called legacies.
Because he's already stronger and faster and whatever. But then he's also got these other superpowers that he starts developing on top of them.
Right. And that's legacies. It's kind of, it comes with puberty, we are meant to understand. And the first one, although it's not actually the first one he develops, we learn later, for no reason we don't know that he can talk to animals until the very end, even though it's sort of foreshadowed, but it's also like, why is this a big reveal?
Yeah,
we don't really know why they didn't tell us he could talk to animals the whole time, and that was kind of the first one he developed. Because in the beginning, he gives some deer in the Florida Keys some carrots or something when he's saying goodbye, and he feels like something passes from the deer to him, and then he leaves and doesn't think about it again.
Yeah. I feel like it was setting up the fact, like, Henry was getting anxious because his other legacies weren't developing after he developed the first one, or what they thought was the first one, which is like, his hands light up and he's resistant to fire.
Right. The fact that we're meant to feel like he's not developing his powers soon enough is meant to develop a sense of tension, but it doesn't really work.
It doesn't work. And then does Henry even get to know that, like, he had this other power?
I don't think so. So what happens is,
I guess there's no payoff.
The first power that he's aware of developing is lumen, which is where his hands light up, and he can expand this power to become resistant to fire, basically.
Not internally, just
externally. And
which is pretty big. That's pretty big.
And so once he starts developing this power, which happens on his first day of school, which kind of sucks.
It does.
Because he starts getting really, really sweaty, and his hands start lighting up, and he's like, what's happening to me? Yeah.
And then, like, a fever, and then passing out.
Yeah.
In a closet.
Which I guess is one of the reasons why he's not able to hide himself as much in this school as he was previously.
I get that, but, like, I think our point still stands.
Yeah.
Like,
and I think they should have left immediately.
Yeah, they should have left immediately. I don't understand, like, why, because, like, it would have been, like, less conspicuous, I feel, if he showed up and then he's gone, and then everyone's like, that was really weird, but I guess we'll never see that guy again, and they forget about it after 5 minutes.
Yeah, and then they move to, like, Canada or something.
Yeah, and instead of it being like, oh no, this is, something weird happened to this guy, and he's still here and still weird. Let's inspect the fact that he's weird. Like, I don't know, it leaves them way more open to scrutiny than they want to be, so anyway. But
yeah, so he develops the lumen powers, and at this point, Henry's like, oh, okay, you're ready to learn more about your legacies in Lorien, so let's open up your Loric chest, because they've got this chest of, it's kind of like an inheritance.
Yeah.
And you understand that even if they hadn't been even if they hadn't had to leave their home planet, which, by the way, we're meant to understand is completely dead at this point.
Yeah.
There's no one left. Their families are all gone. And they're the last ones left from their planet. So they have this Loric chest that has various things from Lorien. John has no idea what's in it because
he's been waiting to open it. He's very excited about the prospect of opening it. Honestly, I was really excited too, and I feel like this chest is such a letdown. We hardly get to see anything in it, and, like, it's all boring stuff.
Well, because Henry is like, oh, we'll just take out one thing at a time. I won't, like...
And the most boring things that, don't do a lot.
Look, okay. I don't remember if we learn if there's good reasons for not having opened the chest.
But if we do, it's not in this book.
It's not in this book. But if I was Henry, working with the knowledge that I have of what's going on here, I would have, like, drilled Lorien knowledge into this kid's head from the time he was little.
Yeah.
I would have walked him through every item in his chest, because Henry doesn't have any superpowers. It's very likely that Henry is gonna die.
Yeah.
Like, Henry will die first. And
guess what? He does.
Yeah.
Without having gone through all of the things in the chest with John.
Right.
And barely telling him anything.
And so there's a high likelihood that Henry will die and John will be on his own, because Henry doesn't know that he will meet up with other kids. They're not supposed to. The whole reason they're separate is because once any of them come together, the charm is broken and they can be killed in any order that the Mogs want to kill them in. The charm, for whatever reason it works in the way that it does, only allows them to be killed in the order of their numbers when they're separate, basically. And once they come together, that's it. It's broken. For all Henry knows, he'll die, and John will be left with no knowledge of the items in his chest and how they can help him.
And especially this is crazy, like, Henry. Even if, like, he wanted to keep things a secret, as soon as they knew that the first three were dead and John was next, he should have been like, well, let's get out the chest. Like, let's go through all this shit, because, like, they're coming for you, bud. Like,
yeah, because he's next. And Henry seems to show urgency and anxiety over this to an appropriate degree, and yet does not act appropriately.
Yeah.
Does not act in a way that makes sense.
Yeah.
To be generous to the characters, I'm not saying the characters can't be flawed at all, but the way that the story tells it, it's almost like we're not meant to believe that they're flawed for the reasons that they are.
Yeah.
You know, like, there are flaws that maybe the story leans into more than others, but there are some things that I would count as flaws that the story, I think, makes it seem like is not. Yeah,
like Henry leaving out all this information.
Yeah, like Henry not telling John about anything, and that, for that reason, Henry to me comes across as, including his explanation to John about how, us Loriens, we're so devoted and we don't fall in love like Earthlings. We're very, devoted and we mate for life kind of thing. And also everyone on the planet apparently, like, gets married and has kids between the ages of, like, 25 and 35 or something.
I missed that.
Yeah. It's, like, very weird. It's the small planet, apparently. It's smaller than Earth. But how small? Because it seems like they only have one culture on Lorien.
Yeah.
And that's Lorik, and that's it.
That's true.
Which is not at all how Earth is. But anyway, we don't know because we don't get to learn about it.
And John does meet he meets number 6, like, towards the end. And she clearly has way more knowledge than he does. So obviously her Saipan was like, yeah, let me tell you shit in case I die. And then she did.
Yeah, so yeah, that brings us towards the end of the book. We mentioned most of the book is spent in Ohio just doing regular old kid stuff, and then John learning a bit about his legacies. And what I wanted to mention when I talked about that was also that he gets to have visions when they open the chest. He has visions about the last day that they spent on Lorien and how the invasion, basically where the Mogadorians wiped them all out, went. And so John kind of experiences memories that sometimes are his and sometimes are other people's, it seems like.
Yeah, I think so.
And
that's not meant to be one of his powers, right? That's just something that he can do as part of his Lorik training.
Yeah, I think so. It's not really clear.
It's not clear.
But so it's really mostly it's either that's happening or he's just kind of being a regular old teenage boy.
Yeah.
And then at the end, the Mogadorians do catch up with them. And there's, like, 2 different points where we encounter them. The first time is the time when Henry goes missing, as we mentioned, and they manage to actually rescue him and get him out of there. And they see the Mogadorians, but the Mogadorians don't see them.
That was a little implausible to me. I'm being real.
Because Henry got actually kidnapped by the newsletter guys who were not really, they're just regular humans who were just, like, being threatened by the Mogadorians, basically, and so kidnapped him. But then, so they were able to get away from them and get away before the Mogs saw them. But then the second time we see them... I forgot about
his second power. He can levitate things.
Oh, yeah, telekinesis. I think they all...
I think they all have that, but it didn't develop right away.
Yeah. So he gets telekinesis later on, too, in the story. But yeah, the second time we see the Mogadorians is the end when there's this big battle at the high school. And this is another part that is just so long.
This is long. This is honestly my least favorite part of the book. Like, you'd think that the rest of it, going through all this mundane stuff, would be the worst. I didn't really feel that way because, like, I felt stuff happened. Because so much happened, I felt it like it kept me engaged. This part was so freaking long. Just this battle at the high school. And, like, John does describe it in excruciating detail, which you'd think would be good, and yet it wasn't.
Yeah, no. And I will say, for my part, I'm usually not a fan of reading battles.
Yeah.
I do gloss over a bit so I don't know if it's that the battle itself was poorly written. I wouldn't even say... I
don't really think it was, actually.
I wouldn't say that at all. I would say I personally found it boring.
Yeah, I think it's just like, yeah, for me, I found it boring too.
And drawn out and too long. And a lot of it is because in fight scenes, it's hard for me, at least, to picture what's going on.
And it was also hard to keep track of where they were, because they were in the home ec room, and then they were in somewhere else where there was a tunnel. I think it was like the theater. And there was a tunnel, and then they were on the field, then they were outside, then they were on the football field somehow, but I didn't understand how they got there, and then they went back to the school. I don't know. It was
right. It's keeping track of where they are. It's keeping track of who's with
around.
Whom. Yeah, because in the battle at some point, Henry's there, Sam is there, Sarah's there,
Mark is there.
Six shows up, and this is when she finds them. And Mark is there. And just a quick aside about Mark, because we didn't really talk about him much.
Yeah.
So Mark is the bully. He does a lot of asshole things. He puts, like, manure in Sam and John's lockers at some point. He terrorizes them at the Halloween festival when they go on a hayride. He kind of, like, kidnaps them. And because it's, like, a haunted hayride, and then he takes Sarah and John and tries to beat John up, but then... Obviously, John is an alien, so he wails on him. And this is one of the first times when he uses his powers in a way that kind of
and they really should have moved after that.
Yeah, they really should have moved after that. But then, like, later on, as it becomes more and more obvious throughout the book that Sarah is just not going to come back to Mark, and John stands up for himself, it seems like Mark backs off a lot and sort of starts to develop a sense of...
Like, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
Like, he invites them to a party that he has, and not in order to hurt them and bully them. Just like, I'm having a party, I'm inviting everybody, you guys can come too.
Right, and they do go, even though
I don't know why.
Which I wouldn't if I were them, but, whatever. And then at Mark's party, actually, I think where he has his biggest turn, because he kind of goes from hating John to being neutral about him to starting to... basically understand that something weird is going on with this kid, but he also respects him. And that's when there's a house fire, and John saves Sarah and Mark's dogs from the fire because they get trapped in there during the party.
Because of course Sarah gets trapped. It's no one else. Of course it's Sarah.
No, she's very much the damsel in distress kind of character.
Who like would read as, no, I'm not, I'm strong and whatever, but it's also like definitely not. Like she just is.
She's meant to be that because John singles her out basically as like his reason for fighting when he didn't have one before, which is just very cliche.
It is, and also like, I'm sorry, I definitely agree that like Henry could have instilled more like inspiration in you, but like you also are fighting for the survival of your race,
home planet,
and also like Henry is a good reason. Like even though he's flawed, like he kept you alive this whole time. Like fight for Henry. Sarah's fine. Anyway, so Mark does come around, and then it's still unclear to me exactly how he got involved in the fight and why he did end up there. But he is fighting alongside them when the Mogadorians come.
Yeah, and he's like, again,
he's trying. He just jumps in, and I guess we should say like John does tell Sam that he's an alien eventually, and then also tells Sarah before this.
And then Sarah just doesn't care.
Oh yeah, because when he saves her, like it's very from the fire, it's very obvious that like he is not,
because he should not have been able to survive.
Yeah,
the fire and the fall that he took when he jumped out of the window.
So he kind of like has to tell her that he's an alien, and she's just like, okay.
She's like, I'm so in love, I don't care.
Yeah,
basically.
Yeah, and it's like,
And they get an opportunity for tension and interest in their relationship. It's like, I know this book it's like not a romance novel. It's not a romance-centric YA novel, and yet it is. And
yes, it is.
It kind of is. Like, they spend a lot of time focusing on John's feelings about Sarah, and yet there's no relationship conflict outside of, I might have to leave Sarah
It's very
one day.
clearly a perfect relationship. Doesn't matter that he's an alien. Doesn't matter that...
No, and there's nothing wrong with the relationship being fine and not having a lot of conflict, but
like, it's just...
There's gotta be something.
She didn't even take time to process the fact that he was an alien. She was just like, yeah, exactly what you said. I'm so in love. It's fine.
She didn't need any kind of proof or explanations beyond him just saying, yeah,
nope.
This is
just
who I am.
like, okay, cool.
Oh, wait, there's one. It might be, oh, yeah. When he's telling her, when she's like, what just happened? When she's like shocked that he got her out of this fire, and she's like, what's going on? He goes, I am not who you think I am. I say, who are you? I am number 4. What's that supposed to mean? It's like, for real. What is that supposed to mean? Why
is that how you decide to reveal? Like, it doesn't make any sense.
I am number 4.
And then he's like, Sarah, it's going to sound stupid and crazy, but what I'm about to say is the truth. And I'm like, but you already sounded stupid and crazy when you just said, I am number 4, and then didn't explain anything else.
It's not like there's some kind of general knowledge of, like, aliens being numbered and...
Right, like, yeah. If there was, then... That would actually make for a cool premise.
If there was, like, a news story where it's like, there are these Loric aliens, and they're numbered 1 to 9.
Or what if it was just, like, well-known, like, this is an alien race established, like, they're among us, and, it's a whole, like, theory, I don't know, that everyone knows, or just, like, and then, like, so then if he says, I am number 4, she's like, no way, you're number 4? Oh, my God.
Right.
Like, there's no...
If
someone says that to me, I'm just like, what?
It was, oh my God. I was like, dude,
that had to be, okay, this is not like a bad book, I will say. I think we're like kind of tearing into it a little bit. That was the worst part. That was the worst writing.
Yeah.
I was floored.
It's an example that I think is an example of a few other times that this kind of thing happens in the book, where it's kind of like the writers were imagining this as a movie.
Yeah.
And hitting certain cliche, like, movie scene beats.
Yeah.
And this was one of them, where you have a character, even though it wouldn't make sense even if it wasn't a movie, it just feels like a scene that you would have in a movie, where a character just dramatically is like, I am number 4. You know what I'm saying?
Sure he does that in the movie, and we have to go back and watch the movie.
Yeah. Which, actually, I enjoyed the movie more, I think, in my memory.
Well, because Timothy Oliphant plays Henry, so,
that wasn't... See, I didn't like Henry in any iteration, but...
I don't remember the movie that well. Anyway.
But anyway, I think we were originally going to talk about Mark. Oh, we
were originally talking about the end battle, and then we were talking about Mark, because Mark is there and fighting with them somehow.
Yeah.
So let's just get back to the end battle, because or we could wrap up Mark, which is to say... He had some character development. I don't think it was done super clearly, but it was there.
No, I liked him. I liked the idea of him.
Yeah.
But that's really it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the battle at the end, as we mentioned, Six shows up, and she's been tracking John because she lost her Saipan about 3 years ago, and she's been alone. So she's been ready to basically break this charm and get the gang together. Because they've already lost 3 of them, and they almost lost John in this case. So she's like, let's just break this charm and hope that the rest of the numbers are gonna be able to make it while we track them down. So she shows up at the school when the Mogs show up, because the Mogadorians also saw the same thing that she did. There's a video of John saving Sarah
from the
fire. So that's when the shit goes down, and they find John at the school and everything, and so she is automatically kind of cool.
She's fine.
She's kind of like, you could tell there's an interesting character there.
Yeah.
So even though we don't get a lot with her, you could tell she's a fighter. Like, she's a warrior kind of personality. I think she's like a year older than John, maybe, and so she's come into her powers
Yeah, so
already.
she's, like, good to go.
Yeah, and she can turn invisible and stuff, which is...
It almost seems to me like she is just a stronger version of Sarah, honestly. I didn't really get a lot of difference between the two of them.
They're very different. I think Sarah is like a kind-hearted, innocent soul. Like, she's got that vibe. And Six is like hardened warrior.
No, I definitely think that's true. I just felt like Six is like what Sarah would be if Sarah were Six. I don't know. That was just the vibe I got.
I don't think I felt that way. But regardless... I think she's an interesting character. She's got like a bloodlust kind of thing going on. She's very motivated to kill the Mogadorians, which we didn't talk too much about them, but we don't really know that much about their culture, other than that they
destroyed their planet.
Evil because they destroyed their planet. They destroyed Lorien, and now they're trying to destroy Earth because.
Just basically by using the resources, is how they were destroying. There's like a subtle, not so subtle, brief undertone of like global warming is bad, and just like really brief parts of it. But like the basic thing is like the Mogadorians destroyed their planet by using its resources, didn't pay attention to the warning signs, then invaded Lorien to get the resources there, completely destroyed it, and like now they want to do the same thing in Earth. Or on Earth, but like what's not clear to me is why they like so quickly took over Lorien and then like don't feel like they can so quickly take over Earth. Like they're just biding their time and hunting down these kids.
Because Earth doesn't even have superpowered people.
Right.
Like Earth is...
I think maybe it's bigger and so maybe that's why, but like it's unclear.
It's really weird. And, well, that's the thing, though, is I think we might be meant to understand that there's something more to it. There's something that John doesn't know a lot of things.
John doesn't know anything. So by extension, we don't really know anything.
I think we are meant to understand that there are things behind the attack that don't add up. And I think that is indicated.
True.
There's also, in those visions that John had, he seems to mention that there's an animosity in the Mogadorians that he hadn't expected because he assumed that they just took over because of the resources, but it seems like they actually have some kind of grudge or...
So this might be something where you want to read the sequels and then tell us.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've read the sequels, I just don't remember.
Yeah, I don't remember them
Not
either.
all of them. I actually did look up a little bit about some of the...
Well, I'm trying to get our listeners engaged, so
oh yeah,
read the sequels and then tell us what's in them.
Or if you've already read them,
you've already read them, please tell us what's in them.
Yeah, because there's obviously a lot of lore here that we don't have, and I do think that some of it does come up in later books. It's really just about feeling out whether things feel well set up in this one or not. As a first novel, I do think it's kind of weak in establishing...
Yeah, I mean, like, there's cool stuff where I'm like, yeah, I want to know more. It's just a matter of, like, actually getting to that point, and I didn't.
But yeah, so in the Mogadorians, too, like, we get indications that some of them look not human, but some of them look
almost
more human. Yeah.
There's the scouts and the...
Soldiers,
yeah.
Yeah. And they use some kind of, like, energy weapons and cursed swords and things like that.
Yes.
But we don't get any characterizations
like, really scary,
for any
gross,
of them. Like, animals. Yeah. So, it also kind of, like, it rubs me the wrong way that the very human-looking Lorians are the quote-unquote good aliens, and the less human-looking Mogadorians are the quote-unquote bad aliens.
And they're just bad for bad sake, like you said. They're not really...
Right, which again, might be fleshed out a bit differently in later stories, but it's not even... Obviously on paper, it's like, yes, committing like planet-wide genocide...
Pretty bad.
...is bad. However, we also have to understand that every conflict is complex, and I'm sure there are many Mogadorians who exist back on Mogador who aren't committing, planet-wide genocide.
You would think, because they really do make it sound like all of the Mogadorians are just...
Right. We don't know anything about their culture or what
and
yet.
It seems like the only ones that we see are male. Like...
Right, yeah,
we don't know anything about their gender structures. Like, they're just coded male, and...
Another thing, just in general about this book, and it's going to be a lot of the books that we're reading, because a lot of the books we're reading are from like late 90s, early 2000s era. It's just very heterosexual.
Heteronormative.
Very... Yeah, not very diverse. Very white. I mean,
very white.
Every character in this is white, except some of the, I think 6 is indicated to be like olive-skinned and dark-haired in the book, not in the movie, but in the book, which indicates that Lorians have varied skin tones, and I think some of the other characters, the other numbers have varied features. Yeah. But, like, culturally, it's very white.
Yeah.
Very white American. So... You know, so again, we don't get a lot of different cultures on Earth, let alone, you know, alien cultures at least. Like, my God,
You'd think there'd be some.
You'd think there would be more cultural something.
Yeah.
But, yeah, again, it is the first book, and there's definitely a lot of stuff you don't know, and that's fine. It's something... I seem to recall that I found... some of the other numbers, the other characters that we meet, aside from John, more interesting, more unique.
That might have been the case. See, this is the only one I read multiple times. I didn't read any of the other. I think I read 2 books after this. I remember enough to know who my favorites were. And I know 9 was the favorite of mine. I'm pretty sure 9 is kind of an asshole, but I feel like that makes him more interesting than... Didn't even remember 9 was a guy.
John. 9 also has like they all have really tragic backstories.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because their whole planet was wiped out, and that's why they traveled to Earth the way they did.
It seems like John actually manages to have the most normal upbringing up until his he's like.
Well, maybe that is a reason for Henry keeping him in the dark. I guess trying to give him a normal life on Earth, even while emphasizing that.
Except that
your purpose is to save Lorien.
Yeah, Henry definitely gave him a more normal life than some of the other safe. And see, there's so many interesting conversations we could have if we bring in the other stories. It's just, obviously, we don't have time for that right now. But, yeah, basically the book ends with Henry dying in the battle.
John being able to talk to a Mogadorian animal and keep it from, like, killing him and actually take out the Mogadorians itself. Because apparently it's, like, he can read its thoughts and finds out that it's been, like, tortured by them and basically bred to kill. And so he has an easy time just being like, look, here's what I've experienced because of the Mogadorians. And we're on the same side. Kill them. And then it does. But, like, earlier he met a different Mogadorian animal that, like, didn't seem to have that experience at all. Like, it was just like, you are my enemy and I'm gonna kill you. And there was no sign of, like, yeah, I've been tortured and this is hard for me. I don't know. I thought it was a little strange.
Or maybe just John hadn't delved that deep into the animal psyche. I don't know.
But he did say it looked even different. Like, it was like, this one looked more tortured or something. And I was like, okay, so why is that one more tortured than the other one? Like, what? Anyway, I don't know. I can't exactly describe it, but it struck me as, like, a little off.
Yeah. I kind of don't hate the concept, though.
No, I don't.
Of him, befriending this animal.
That's literally the only way that they could have lived. Like, if they got out of it any other way, it wouldn't have made sense. It was a little convenient.
It was. But it was interesting. I think with better everything, it could have been a pretty impactful scene. Yeah. And I didn't hate it it was a creative way to get them out of the situation they were in.
Yeah. And I don't think that they could have gotten out of it any other way.
Yeah. But, so we end with John, Bernie Kosar / Hadley, 6, all very, very badly injured, with Sam, Mark, and Sarah having managed to
be fine,
escape mostly unscathed.
But just because they were hiding and the Mogadorians, like, didn't care about them.
Yeah, but they actually ended up getting a few kills in there.
They did, which we don't explore the impact on their psyches at all.
No, not really. So we get a very emotional goodbye with Sarah, a very emotional goodbye with Henry, because Henry's dead. And
John is sad. John cries. And I like the fact that he cries. Like, I appreciate the fact that he actually cries and, like, cries in front of John and, Mark, and, like, no one is like, oh my God, you're crying. And he doesn't even think, oh my God, I'm crying. He's just like, no, this is fucking sad. I'm going to cry. So I feel like that's the one place where John didn't really exhibit some of that traditional toxic masculinity.
Nah, we get some like some genuine depth of emotion and expression of emotion.
Which makes sense because, again, Henry's been his father figure and now he's gone.
Yeah.
And also, even if he weren't sad about that, which I don't know why he wouldn't be, but like, even if he weren't sad about that, now he's basically on his own, even though he's got like 6 and stuff. Like, he's still kind of like more on his own than he ever was. So.
Right. And so what ends up happening is they say goodbye to Mark and Sarah, and 6, Sam, and 4 decide to set off and find the rest of the numbers.
For some reason,
so
Sam gets to go.
Here's the thing, okay? I was under the impression, spoilers for the subsequent books. So I'm just going to say that right now. This is something I remember from the subsequent books, and I want to bring it up here, but if you don't, just skip ahead.
It's going to be a spoiler for me too, everybody.
So Sam's dad, this is sort of lightly implied, but you don't get into it in this book. Sam's dad actually was one of, or the person who met the Lorians when they came to Earth.
Oh,
so yeah. Sam's dad was actually involved in this whole thing, and that's why he went missing. He was taken, I'm pretty sure, by the Mogadorians. And so I had thought that, I'm pretty sure Henry's letter will indicate something like that, but we didn't get to read the letter. I had thought that they did because that would inspire Sam to that. It would make sense that Sam would then go with them.
Yes.
To find his father. And that might even be something that they put in the movie. I'm not sure.
It's possible.
But regardless,
it didn't really make sense in the book why Sam went with them.
I was waiting the whole time to find out that Sam's father was involved with this so that it would make sense when Sam left with them. And that didn't happen, and I was really surprised.
Yeah.
Because that's something we definitely find out, at least in the next books, that Sam's dad was involved and may or may not still be out there.
Yeah.
The last thing I think we want to cover is just, let's circle back to the author.
Yes, Pittacus lore.
So, yes, this book was written by Pittacus lore, who...
And you find this out, like, not too far into the book, like maybe in the first third.
Yes. Is the name of one of the...
Like the main elders of Lorien.
Yeah, so the Lorik had several elders who were their kind of leaders, and Pittacus lore was one of them. And so it's kind of a cute little, this book was written by the Lorians. They're really out there, you know?
Yeah.
This is them telling their story, and Pittacus lore wrote it. So,
which, like, doesn't make sense.
That is where it begs the question, why is this written in first person present
yes. tense? Can Pittacus lore just, like, tap into the psyches of, like, the numbers and, like, just be able to narrate, like, what, and yeah, just be able to see what's going on and therefore narrate, like...
Yeah. Because
the actual author's name is Joby Hughes,
and actually, I think there are actually a couple authors associated with the name Pittacus lore, but for a long time, I don't think that they even revealed who they were.
Yeah.
Which again, I don't know. I mean, maybe we're making fun of these actual aliens out there who are telling their. But yeah, right. Can Pittacus lore like see through their eyes, or are we meant to understand that like? So I read an interview with Pittacus lore because I had to look this up a bit because I was very curious. And so like HarperCollins has a little article that they did where they're interviewing the secretive alien author Pittacus lore.
That's funny.
And one of the things that is brought up is that they're writing about true events that they're about a year ahead of the so when the book comes out, basically we're meant to understand the events of the book happened like a year before.
Okay.
So like a year or two behind the events that are happening. And how? Because Pittacus lore, as far as we know, spoilers for the next couple books, like they don't meet him.
Yeah.
So like how does he... So are we meant to understand... And if it's the characters themselves who are writing under this pen name, right?
Yeah.
Like maybe it's like John telling his own story.
Right.
But if it's like a year... Then we would see in the books them writing the story, and I don't recall that being a thing.
Yeah.
So I just question...
Oh, John actually does talk about writing in a journal.
He does talk about writing in a journal. That's true. Oh, okay. So maybe that... I don't remember it coming up again. But
yeah.
Maybe... I don't know. I know we're digging a little bit too far into maybe what's just a cute kind of because I think it's cute. I
Yeah.
like that, writing a book and having the author be technically a character from the book. But yeah, it's just like, I don't know. I would prefer if it was not in even if it's in first person, because even if maybe we end up finding out that it's the characters themselves who are writing the stories, why not first person past tense? Why not have it be reflective?
Yeah.
And if it's reflective,
that would
then
make a little bit more sense.
you can have a little bit more of a retrospective look, and maybe you get more of the character's personality that comes through, especially when you have a character who has so little personality as John, which I don't know if you started reading. I started reading the little excerpt of the next book at
Oh, I didn't.
the end, and already it's from the perspective of a different number, and already I'm like, this is a much more interesting character.
Oh, maybe. Interesting.
Yeah.
Now I kind of want to read the rest of them, because I think there's 5 main books, and then they have a bunch of like mini ones too.
Yeah.
But the 5 main books are I Am Number 4, The Power of 6, The Revenge of 7, and I think I know I read The Power of 6. I think I read The Revenge of 7. Then Fugitive 6. Then the next one's Fugitive 6, and then the last one is Return to 0.
No, that's not.
That's not right?
I think those might be the some of the mini. There's so many. Oh my god.
Yeah.
No, it's actually like the rise of the fall of 5, the rise of 9.
The Fall of 5. Yeah. Wait. Okay.
Oh god.
Just kidding. It's
on.
really hard. We're trying to Google this right now. It's actually really hard to figure out, like, what is the order and what belongs to what. Okay. Oh, so we never read The Revenge of 7. This makes so much more sense. Okay.
Yeah, the main novels are I Am Number 4, The Power of 6, The Rise of 9, The Fall of 5, The Revenge of 7, The Fate of 10, and United as 1. I'm pretty sure I read at least the first 3, maybe the first 4.
I think I read the first 3. I don't know if I read
Actually,
the first.
I think I
Wow,
might
they
have read
came
the
out in
first 4.
2009, 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015, 2016.
Yeah.
That's pretty consistent.
And I'm pretty sure, so there's, aside from the novellas, I'm pretty sure there's a spin-off series set after this one.
Yeah, I think I saw that when you were Googling it.
Yeah.
Anyway, now I kind of want to keep reading these all, because I think just to, like, circle back and close the loop on everything, like, I think a lot of this made it sound like we didn't like this book and it was bad. I don't think that's the case for either of us. I actually do like this book, and I've read it many times, and, like, there's issues with it, but I enjoy it. Like,
it's one of those books where I really felt like I've outgrown this as I was reading it.
Yeah.
Which I don't always feel. Like, for example, with Lily's Ghost, which we just talked about, I don't really feel like I've outgrown that story, you know?
Yeah.
I feel like I can appreciate it as it is. I think it's really just with this, the plot holes and the gaps in the writing and the writing style itself feel so amateur that it's distracting to me more so than it would have been when I was younger. But it's not necessarily a bad story by any means. It's just lacking in some ways that I can't really engage with as much as I could have. Like, I can ignore it the same way I used to.
And I actually want to contrast this with the first book that we read, which, why am I forgetting the name?
Beautiful Creatures.
Beautiful Creatures. Because both of these are books that have a lot in them and a lot going on, but are also so super different. Where, like, this is a lot going on and a lot happens, but also, like, nothing.
Yeah.
It's got a lot of, like, it lacks some substance. Whereas, like, the other one, we could spend, I'm sure we could keep talking about this book too, but, like, we could spend so much time talking about just Beautiful Creatures. And, like, I think every time I'd read that, I would get something new out of it. So, like, I don't feel like I've outgrown it in the same way.
Yeah.
Where, like, this I don't think I'm going to get anything out of if I ever read it again, other than it's something I'm going to just read quickly to enjoy and just, like, not think about it too hard.
There's nothing to really dig into. And I do feel like in the later books, there's probably more lore-wise to dig into.
Yeah, why I kind of want to read this, because I am interested in the lore.
Thematically and lore-wise, the first book, just there's not a lot there.
So again, I don't really know why I read it as many times as I did. Maybe I kept hoping that I was going to get more out of it than I did.
Yeah. I think I looked up briefly online. It seems like there are some people who kind of formed a little fandom around this, and
That's cute.
I think with the other books, when you get to know all the other numbers, there's a cute potential for lots of different character interactions and dynamics that I think lend to that. And I think that's what really appeals to me.
And that's why I would be interested in continuing to read this, even though I feel like I Am Number 4 is...
Yeah. And I remember getting the feeling as I was reading that I was more interested in the characters, but less interested in the plot as I went. And I did kind of... When I was younger, I felt a bit like I started to feel the plot really starting to fall apart and just feel like there was no plan.
Interesting. I literally don't remember them basically at all, besides this one.
Right. Yeah, I remember that feeling. I don't remember all of the details. But yet, again, there was that heart in these individual characters, and seeing them come together was really interesting. So there's stuff there. And so maybe we will continue to read this and
maybe
check out the other books. And again,
and all three of our listeners, if you have any insight or input you want to add,
feelings about the story,
let us know in the comment section on whatever you're listening to. I don't know if Spotify has a comment section, but
I don't.
I'm sure there's some way you can leave
feedback. You can leave a star rating on Spotify. We have a YouTube channel. Actually, we're posting them on YouTube too. So if you want to leave a comment, read and repeat on YouTube.
Yeah.
It's pretty new, so you might have some trouble finding it, but if you can and you want to comment,
it's there.
It's there.
Any final thoughts on I Am Number 4?
Nah, just I feel like we were a little critical throughout this whole thing.
I think we were.
And I just want to say, anytime we're critical and maybe we get a little over analytical about these stories, I just always want to come back to the fact that I'm really happy that all these stories exist, because then we get to talk about them, you know?
And like, for all the faults, there's also enjoyable things, and it's just a good read, you know? There's not you also don't have to think too hard about it.
Yeah.
If you don't want to.
Yeah.
Or you can.
So.
It's up to you.
So yeah. So I hope that you enjoyed this if you've gotten all the way to the end, and
feel free to leave some comments, give us some feedback, let us know what happens in the rest of these books.
And let us know if you want to hear more about the Lorien legacies.
Yeah. We'll read them if you want.
All right. Till next time.
Thanks, everyone.